Today on this episode of The Crossover, we will be discussing brain-enhancing technology with founder and CEO of Techforpsych and former U.S. Navy psychiatrist, Dr. Cody Rall. Learn how technology can be harnessed to not only understand the mind better, but also to change the way we think about mental health, wellness, and clinical behavioral health care. Much more on this episode of The Crossover. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be talking with Dr. Cody Rall today about brain-enhancing technology. Some pretty crazy stuff going on. Let's pull him on. How you doing?
Yeah.
Listen, man, thanks for joining us. I know you're super busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time. Awesome. Listen, I'm going to do a brief intro just while everyone's logging on. We have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Cody Rall. He's a nationally recognized leader on the cutting edge of brain technology, which we'll hear all about in just a minute. As background, Dr. Rall is a board-certified and U.S. Navy-trained psychiatrist who specializes in neurotechnology wearables. He is co-founder of Stanford Brainstorm, the world's first academic laboratory dedicated to transforming brain health through entrepreneurship. He also served as a selection judge on the Psychiatry Innovation Lab, which is an annual national competition that supports developing technological solutions to problems in mental health care. In addition, he is the founder of Techforpsych, which we'll also talk about today, a media and relations company that covers advancements in technology, all related to neuroscience. And here today to discuss brain-enhancing technology, such an unbelievable field with all these new advancements. Very excited to talk to you
similar
today, Cody.
Experience, the brain, actually a very different experience. Love to hear your thoughts on these technologies as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to get into. I guess we'll start by asking, how did you first
before
get
I went into
interested
medical
in
school,
neuroscience
asked these
technology?
questions of myself. I actually had a childhood friend whose father had severe OCD and ended up committing suicide, unfortunately, when we were young. And that had a big impact on me. But neuroscience in general, I've always been kind of a big picture type guy. So just the way that the brain interprets the environment and how disorders like OCD could manifest out of the brain interested me. So when I went off to medical school, I never really actually saw myself as becoming a psychiatrist. At first, I thought I was going to be a surgeon, which is actually pretty common for people that end up going into psychiatry for some weird reason. And then took a look at neurology and eventually centered in on psychiatry. I think part of that was training with the Navy and seeing the amazing technologies they had there, where I trained at Walter Reed there in Bethesda, just north of DC. They had some of the most advanced brain imaging technologies in the world there. They had a magnetic encephalography machine, functional MRI, just all these cutting edge technologies that were showing in veterans that came back from Iraq and Afghanistan that they actually had structural damage to their brain that we couldn't see before. We had those advanced imaging technologies and were manifesting as things like mood disorders, anxiety. I think that people forget, even within the course of my training, that these things weren't talked about as much 10 to 20 years ago, that these psychological symptoms had a biological basis. So that's where I became more and more interested in actually obtaining what you call biomarkers from the brain through various technologies.
Now, reading about your history and kind of your journey through this field, you're very big into meditation. And, I've been hearing so much about the importance of it. Tell us a little bit about why you think in this day and age that's, the world's only getting crazier.
I think what a lot of people don't talk about is
so
meditation can be very multifaceted. There's a lot of different tools that go into your tool set of developing a meditative practice. And I think that one of the first things that people can learn about is mindfulness. And that tends to be a very introductory concept that people learn about meditation. And I think what mindfulness does is teach self-awareness, which is so important in today's age. If you're getting overstimulated by your phone or video games, or you're drinking one too many times over the course of a month and it's disrupting your sleep and your energy levels the next day, just having that self-awareness through mindfulness, I think, is extremely valuable. And you'd be surprised how many people have not really developed that over the course of their adolescence or adult lives. But over the years, I've gotten more and more interested in energetic meditations. I do think that there are aspects of our central nervous system that manifest themselves in meditation. And again, just as I thought I would not become a psychiatrist one day, I never thought I would get into energetic energy point meditation, sort of the traditional chakras that you'll find in a lot of meditative practices. But the more that I read, the more that I practice meditation, the more I feel like there actually are energetic sinkholes in some of those major nerve complexes that run through our central nervous system. So that's what I've been doing a lot lately. And I've talked about that on the channel quite a bit. I think that what some of these neurofeedback devices do is teach you how to stay with an extended period of concentration on one point of energy for extended periods of time. And that creates these different experiences that you get during meditation that can be very energetic, feel very euphoric, and cause you to enter sort of mind spaces that I would have not thought that you could actually evoke through meditation itself, that has evolved over the years, that I'm pretty excited about.
And, you know, I would say that that's a great transition into your company, Techforpsych, which is such a unique company.
Well, I was
Tell us
always
a little bit about what the mission
doing video
of your company
projects
is.
As a child and as a teenager. And then when I went to medical school, I sort of stopped doing that and felt like something was missing. So that was one aspect of it. Is I'm a huge fan of video. I love being creative and creating different B-roll shots, different ways of communicating ideas. And so that was sort of a convergence between my interest in neuroscience, meditation, and video format. So Techforpsych up till now has largely been a media company, basically just a YouTube channel where I take these ideas, communicate them to people, get feedback, and come up with some resources about this evolving field. And that was something that was nice to do while I was going through medical school and my residency training, and then my payback to the Navy, because I owed 4 years for medical school training after residency with the Navy. So as you can imagine, yourself being a very busy man as well, there's not a whole lot of time for side projects in medicine, maybe more so in psychiatry than neurosurgery. But because of the nature of what I actually had time for, it was creating content. So it's evolved from there. And now I'm happy to say that I can spend more time doing it. And part of that is communicating with these companies that I've been working with over the years about what people are looking for, the results that they've gotten, what actually works to communicate their mission. So I see Techforpsych as helping along the industry of brain-computer interface and wearable technologies as an interface between these incredible companies and these incredible people, engineers, neuroscientists, and businessmen and businesswomen that are bringing these technologies to the general public, and sort of being the go-between between those, and offering advice on both sides about how to make the niche that much more powerful and effective.
It's such a mind-boggling field, and I want to go into specifics, but first I want to say, like, in your opinion, how interrelated can modern technology and brain performance be? Meaning, how are you harnessing technology to then access the mind? Like, just give us a little background.
They're very
before we
highly
get into
correlated. I think
tools.
of Brian Johnson of Kernel, who's been in the news a lot lately for his Blueprint project. He's actually reversing his epigenetic age. But I think he said it very well, where he talked about how we've designed civilization, and there's a scaffolding there that we haven't been able to use, which is how does civilization, how do our technologies actually affect our brain? How can we start designing smartphones or wearables that actually have a positive impact on our brain function rather than a negative impact? So I think that some of these concerns that people have are very real. People doom scrolling on TikTok and Instagram, sort of getting sucked into their phone, not being present with nature, and wondering why they feel so burnt out because they're getting constant stimulus from their phone rather than relaxing their central nervous system and nature so that they can recoup for the work week, that type of thing. On the other side of things, I think that there are fascinating advancements that are happening right now as far as using technology to influence the brain. I'm actually going to LA next month with a researcher at the Advanced Institute of Consciousness Studies. They're in Santa Monica, and his name's Nico Regente, Dr. Nico Regente. He actually had won a contract to be doing some of the first research work with the kernel flow, which is the big FNIRS device that Brian Johnson's team has developed. But they're actually going to take an MRI of my brain so that they have a structural map, and then they're going to influence my meditation through ultrasound, which should be very interesting. They've got a whole machine there. I saw it last time I was there about 18 months ago, and I'm excited to go there again. He just published a paper on their website, but he's had it done to him as well. Obviously, they're using very low intensity ultrasound to make sure that there hopefully is no structural damage to my brain, as you can imagine. But even ultrasound, those slight pulses from acoustic waves can nudge your brain into certain brainwave states that apparently are quite dramatic, especially if you're using it during the course of a meditation. That'd be an example. And then audiovisual entrainment, neurofeedback. These are all technologies that I'm exploring on the channel and with people to see how technology can affect the brain.
You know, let's get into some details about what you review on your Techforpsych. The Muse headband, which I had not heard about before, but that's the most popular. Tell us a little bit about what this headband does.
I think the Muse headband is a great entry point to people that want to explore what EEG brainwaves are, especially if you want to use it in conjunction with a meditative practice. And there are third-party apps like Mind Monitor where you can download that and actually use Muse to gather data about your brainwaves and just explore and learn. And you can check out some of the content on my YouTube channel that I've made about the Muse, about what the different brainwaves mean, and what the data quality actually is from the Muse headband. And that's always been a struggle with surface level EEG. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of noise there in the signal, particularly in the slower brainwaves in the delta theta range, where muscle contractions can actually look like brainwaves. So it's difficult to actually isolate what is the brainwaves themselves. And they've been working on different sensor technologies, as well as I think that one of the big things that's happening right now is machine learning AI algorithms are increasingly getting better at filtering out noise, which, as you can imagine, creates a better signal and allows for more powerful capabilities. And I think where we've seen that play out is these researchers that have been able to take brain signals of people listening to podcasts or watching movies and actually have the computer decipher what they're listening to just from the brain data alone. And so, yeah, so I think that's a good sort of canary in the coal mine for what's coming down the road here in the next 5 to 10 years. What is the percentage efficacy of decoding brainwave signals and matching that to the accuracy of the podcast that people are listening to? fMRI, a lot better than EEG. EEG full head coverage better than what you would find in the Muse headband, but it's this large gradient of signal resolution that creates these profound outcomes. What I've always said about the Muse headband is I think that it has definitely good enough quality for neurofeedback practices, as well as some self-exploration in EEG, but you won't find the Muse headband deciphering what podcast someone's listening to anytime soon. Or maybe in the future you will, but that is kind of an example of what I think it's effective for, but also its limitations compared to some of the more advanced brain imaging technologies that are around today.
Now, what about sleep? I was reading that the Muse headband can also
so there are some audio recordings that
tell us a little bit about how that works.
ASMR type recordings that relax people and help them bring down. Really, what they're trying to accomplish is, if you have anxiety, you're probably going to be higher up into the beta range of brainwaves, and it will definitely help people to bring and slow their brainwaves down to more of an alpha, theta, delta region as you go in slower and slower brainwaves. So meditative practice in of itself can help with that. Breathing exercises can help with that. Relaxation exercises. And the Muse software and hardware are really designed to facilitate that process, to sort of wind down at the end of the night and get to sleep. They do have sleep tracking capabilities, but honestly, when I use the Muse headband at night, I don't like it on my head when I'm trying to sleep. So that's my own personal review. I think that I don't really have sleep problems, so my level of motivation probably isn't as high as someone that does suffer from insomnia. But I think that it can be helpful to initiate that process of getting to sleep, and some benefit to wearing it to get sleep tracking information. But that's where they're at right now. There's another one, the Friends headband that's coming to market from Earable. They actually got funding from Peter Thiel's capital company. What is that? It's forget the name of it. Founders Fund. So some of the big investment venture capitalists are getting into the game and bringing these new devices to market. And so the Friends headband's another one to watch for. That's sort of specializing in sleep right now. It's a little bit softer, a little bit more comfortable, and they actually have a bone conduction, acoustic capabilities where it gives you sounds that relax you through bone conduction in your ear canal instead of actually being like an audio thing.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I'm not shocked that the investors are getting involved. If you just take a step back and you look at what the future, I mean, this is the future, obviously, accessing the brain that we still know so little about, technology that's advancing. It just seems like a clear marriage between those two fields. What is Mindlift,
love Mindlift,
and how does it
big shout out to
incorporate
Aziz
neurofeedback?
Kadan, who designed the program. He's been working pretty closely with Interaxon, the company that makes the Muse headband, for over 5 years now. And really what they did was reverse engineer what Muse does. Muse has their own proprietary algorithms for the meditation neurofeedback, but Aziz saw early on that it would be beneficial for providers to be able to design their own protocols based on the literature of neurofeedback practices over the years, to be able to deliver neurofeedback to people in their homes. And that's a program that I've used for the last couple of years with my neurofeedback meditation coaching program that I called the Brain Circuit Training Program. I'm taking a little bit of a break on it right now just because I wanted to redesign some things, make it more effective. There's a lot of hurdles that come along with this. I mean, sending the Muse headband technology to the client and having them understand how to log into the software, as well as all the technical issues that often come up with surface level EEG. It's definitely a challenge, but there are hundreds, if not probably 1,000 or two providers in the world that are using Mindlift at this time, and really enjoying the fact that you can deliver neurofeedback training to someone at their home rather than having them come into a brick and mortar clinic, which is a lot more expensive and takes a lot more time investment than just doing it at home with the Muse Mindlift system.
No, of course. I mean, I think we've covered meditation, sleep. Big questions are out there about, are there any tools that can enhance academic performance
I think
and
that
athletic
we are coming
performance?
up the butt of clinical evidence for, right? I mean, a lot of these companies are making certain claims, but, are we able to demonstrate that actually increases focus time or memory? And academic performance, I see, is so multifaceted. You have the memory component, you have the focus component. I don't think that we've been able to show conclusively that any of these devices improve memory per se for people, but a lot of work is being done on focus. Now, Mindlift published a study where they had clients with ADHD go through their training protocols, and there were some definite subjective outcomes based on questionnaires of improvement in focus, as well as some EEG biomarkers that would suggest that their attention had improved as well. So there's definitely focus training that you can do in Mindlift. I've been working very closely with another company that uses fNIRS of the frontal lobe blood flow called Mendi. They're based in Stockholm, Sweden. And they've been making great strides to deliver their product to the general population to improve focus. And we're actually working with a researcher at University of Victoria named Dr. Krieg Olsen, who's fantastic. I don't know if anybody's seen his papers, but they're very widely cited. He did some of the seminal work and validating the EEG signal of the Muse headband. And now we'll be releasing very soon the peer-reviewed study that shows that Mendy actually does track blood flow in the frontal lobe that's correlated with cognitive workload. And he's using a specific neuroscience task called the NBAC that tests, how hard your brain is working. And they actually, I believe, did it through a Tetris game and different levels of difficulty. So tracking how hard someone's frontal lobe is working with the frontal lobe blood flow. Now, correlating that with attention is another step and more research that needs to be done. But I would say, as far as academic performance, that is the most evidence that we have right now, is just gathering more evidence about how these technologies are improving people's focus so that they can pay attention for longer and obviously absorb information better in that way. Another company called Focus Calm, they're focusing more on sports performance. So flow state is big within their apps and their teachings. There's a major coach in the PGA Tour called Rick Sessinghouse that's using it with his clients that are some of the highest performer golfers in the world on the PGA Tour. So that is another product that I would suggest people looking into for sports performance, is enhancing your brain's ability to get into flow state quicker so that you're not trying to think too many steps ahead and getting in the way of these complex muscle movements that you get from training that are enhanced through flow state.
Now, you mentioned both EEG and then blood flow to the brain. What are the pros and cons of wearables that measure
EEG actually
activity
measures
versus
some electrical discharge that comes from the neurons themselves, and that becomes advantageous when you are trying to do things like reaction time. So if something happens really quickly, you want to see how well the brain is responding to that. And there's different neuroscience tests all throughout mental health and academia of using the response, the electrical response of the brain to stimuli. The word for that is evoked relation, ERPs, evoked ERPs. I'll just leave it at that. So there are actually studies in schizophrenia, for example, that people with auditory stimulus, if you give an auditory stimulus multiple times, the ERP will actually dampen down because the brain says, okay, we've heard that signal, that's enough of that, let's dampen down the reaction to it. But some people with schizophrenia have this ERP that continues to be high despite the reactions. And it's theorized that has to do with the way that their brain is wired and sensitivity to stimuli. I think there's some evidence in that for autism as well. That'd be a good example of you need to know how the brain is reacting in real time to stimuli, and that's why EEG would be a beneficial signal. The problem with EEG is that those signals get spread out when they hit the cerebral spinal fluid that bathes your brain and protects it from the hard bone in your skull. I'm sure you're very aware of that with concussions and things that come. So FNIRS is a different way of accessing information about the brain. And what that is doing is tracking blood flow. It depends on the type of FNIRS that you use, but generally it is tracking the oxygenated versus deoxygenated blood flow, which is sort of a secondary marker of how the neurons themselves are metabolically consuming energy to create the action potentials that create the behavior, the thoughts, and the actions from the brain. So that's the disadvantage, is there's less temporal resolution, you would say, with FNIRS than with EEG. But a lot of people have come to the conclusion, at least for now, that FNIRS tends to have better spatial resolution than EEG, meaning that you can triangulate where that area of the brain is activating better than EEG. And one of the cool things about FNIRS is that, for the last 20, 30 years, we've had all these functional MRI studies of how the brain is functioning, and that sort of has become the gold standard for our understanding of circuitry of the brain in the Human Brain Connectome Project, and a lot of our understanding of how the brain is actually doing what it does as a system. So Brian Johnson, for example, went that route, saying FNIRS right now looks like the best choice for something that you could actually use at home to determine the blood flow patterns of your brain and be able to understand what's going on with your brain as far as are you sleeping well? What are your energy levels? How's your concentration? People would even take that a step further and use that type of information to determine brain health. More and more, we're seeing the blood flow within global patterns of the brain can reflect how healthy your brain actually is. And there's a lot of markers that change as we age. So I think everybody's just trying to figure out where these different technologies fit into the whole scheme. And it's like you got all these bits and pieces of the puzzle, and how do you put that together into devices that actually deliver value to people that want to purchase or interact with them, or clinics that are trying to improve people's health and decide what technologies to invest in to, hopefully make their patients better.
Yeah, I mean, one of the more fascinating areas was how the brain-computer interface is enhancing AR and VR. Get into a little bit about what you see happening in that field, because that's fascinating, where you can have that computer-brain interface relate to not just raw data.
Yeah, there's so much going on in that space.
Reality, virtual
just coincidentally,
reality.
Yesterday, Cognition in Santa Barbara, California, they have the AR goggles and EEG on the back of the head for disabled persons being able to navigate the internet through this augmented reality visor. They just got FDA approval, breakthrough approval yesterday. They announced it. So they're going to be working with disabled persons to, generally with EEG, you have to put tags on the AR experience. There'll be like a flickering light tag that'll create a specific signal. And depending on where you're looking on the screen, the brain-computer interface can tell where you're looking and help you navigate the internet, for example. Another big player in that right now is OpenBCI, and that group is doing fantastic work in meditative experiences in VR, as well as even controlling a drone with your facial muscles and your brainwaves. They just did that at TED a couple of weeks ago. The official video hasn't been released yet, but I'm looking forward to TED releasing that. Apparently it went really well, and I know Connor and the team have been really excited about how well the demo went. And they have their new project called Galea, which is the VR brain-computer interface headset. I got to try it at a Consumer Electronics Show here a couple of months ago. It's every year in Vegas in January. And it's great living here in Las Vegas because everybody comes in for the conference and I get to see everybody. But went and demoed the Galea, and it was just so interesting how they could pick up these different facial movements or your brainwaves and create a whole interactive experience in VR. I think it's definitely going to be something we'll be seeing, not even more than 5 years ago. This is happening like right now in the next couple of years.
It can be overwhelming. Obviously, this is what you do for a living, so you know this field so well. But if someone wants to enter at the beginner level, what is the number one wearable they should purchase?
A lot of times my recommendation is
wearable enhancing
I honestly think they've just done a fantastic job with their app, with their hardware. And I think that meditative practice is something that a lot of people, most people would benefit from, as well as they have the third-party apps for you to take a look at your brainwaves and see how, you can do little experiments at home, which is really neat and part of the democratization of neuroscience technology. So generally, I recommend the Muse, and I also really like Mendy and Focus Calm, as well as a lot of the other devices that I talk about. I think Mendy is a little bit better calibrated for improving people's focus, and some people have had fantastic results from it. And I'm really excited that we're able to release some of this scientific testing that we've done here within the next month or two. So let's start with the Muse, but take a look at some of the other devices I've talked about. If people are a little overwhelmed by the amount of content on my channel, I put out a review video every year right before Black Friday, before everybody goes on and starts buying devices for them and their family members. So in the November time frame is really good for taking a look at what videos I have. And I think I normally title it my top picks for 2023 type thing, you know, predicting the next year of devices. So that'd be a good place to start to take a look at a summary of the different devices that are out there, because people have different needs, and depending on where they're coming from, I think that some devices fit them better than others.
Yeah. Now, give us your crystal ball view. You know, this field is exploding, like not on a yearly basis, but a monthly basis. Kind of paint a picture of where we're going to be, in your opinion, 5, 10, 15 years down the road with these wearables that are able to access your brain and form this interface. It's such a fascinating field.
I think
but
that,
just give us your
Nita
kind of crystal ball view.
Professor Nita Farahany has done fantastic work in talking about these different players that are happening. She just put out her book a couple of months ago called Battle for Your Brain. And I love the way that she packaged this. So what's happening in the next couple of months is that they're getting integrated, at least EEG, into headphones. And I think that that is going to be a very powerful endpoint towards mainstream. I think that what we've learned over the last couple of years is that, although myself as a neurotech nerd don't mind, you know, having these bands on my head and interacting with these technologies, most people don't want to be perceived as odd being at work right now with the headband, and, you know, they have to explain to people that it's tracking their brain waves, and then, you know, the attention that comes from that. And so integrating it into devices that we already use in our everyday, I think, is going to be a big part of it becoming a lot more common in the workplace, at home, even in school. So I was surprised that you could actually get good EEG signals from the ear canal or around your ears, but it's becoming more and more of a reality. So I think that that paired with the AR, VR stuff that we talked about a little bit earlier, I think is going to be the big story of the next 1 to 3 years. And what's really exciting in the 5-year mark is I think that there are some technologies coming online that are really going to take our ability to get good data from the brain to a whole different level. There's big advances in FNIRS. There are even some techniques coming along that involve combining ultrasound with FNIRS to get an even better signal. I know Mary Lou Jepson's group out of San Francisco is doing that with open water. And they're actually doing clinical trials for depression ultrasound treatment down at the University of Phoenix that I want to make a video about here pretty soon. One of the other reasons why I'm going to Santa Monica next month with Dr. Regente's team to take a look at the ultrasound stimulation. But once those modalities come online, we're going to see some pretty science fiction type things. And I think we've already seen that. These stories have been going around the last couple of months of this group at University of Austin that really has taken the fMRI analysis of the brain data to a whole different level, in combination with AI, being able to decipher word for word what of podcasts people are listening to just from their brain data alone, or even showing them videos and taking that brain data and having the AI reconstruct the images of what they are watching. It's pretty striking when you look at these papers and these stories. So the question I ask is, what happens when we have those capabilities and wearables that we have at home, combined with the AI capabilities, especially generative AI? I think we're going to be able to project our thoughts on the screen and on the wall, just from brain data alone. And I think that that's achievable within the next 10 years. I think we'll start seeing some fuzzy images here within the next 5 years, maybe with more advanced brain technologies and the expensive stuff. But the science and the technology seems to be there. It's just that we need to make it cheaper and a little bit better and combine it with AI, which is just taking off right now. I think that there's a lot of possibilities there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, I have to wrap it up because I know you're super busy, but what a great interview. I think that, you know, the take home points are that the brain always has been this black box that we We don't know how to access what's in there. Now that technology is advancing and allowing us to access the parts of the brain that we used to never know what was going on. And, you know, thanks for pioneering Techforpsych. Whoever's listening, you know, check out the website, Techforpsych. Unbelievable summary by Dr. Rall here, going over this technology and how it's advancing literally on a month-to-month basis. And the stuff that we're going to see is going to be like science fiction.
Appreciate it, Dr. Fred. Thanks for having me on.
Very exciting times. Thanks for everything you do, Cody. Really amazing.
Thank you. Bye.